The jar gets heavier in your hand than the price tag should allow. That's the first trick. Before you've read a single ingredient, before you've smelled it, the weight of the glass has already told your brain this is serious. You save for it. Or you just decide on some ordinary Tuesday that you're worth it. You walk out of the department store with a bag too small for how important it feels. You get it home, you set it on the counter like a trophy, and that night, under the good bathroom light, you unscrew the lid for the first time. It smells expensive. It feels expensive. And for about 6 weeks, you believe, completely, that this is the jar that finally does what the $20 jar couldn't. And then week 7 comes, and your skin looks like your skin. I've spent my career on the inside of this industry, first in Seoul, then consulting for brands on both sides of the Pacific that you have absolutely heard of. And I want to tell you something before we go any further. By the end of this video, I'm going to show you two of the most famous anti-aging creams on earth. One sold out of Manhattan, one sold out of Seoul, marketed as complete opposites of each other, that turn out to be running the exact same play. And one of them, I'll admit, comes from a little too close to home. But first, one idea, because I need you to carry it through everything I'm about to show you. In my training, you're taught to read a formula the way you'd read a recipe, ingredient by ingredient, in the order they're listed, because that order isn't random. By law, in almost every country that regulates cosmetics, ingredients are listed in descending order of concentration, which means the list itself is a confession. It tells you, quietly, exactly how much of the miracle ingredient you're actually getting, and exactly how far down the label you have to scroll to find it. Once you start reading luxury skincare labels with that kind of coldness, a lot of $1,000 sets stop making sense. Let's get into it. Number 8. Tatcha. If you've spent any time in the beauty aisle at all, you know the story. A Japanese ritual, a founder who fell in love with geisha, skincare traditions, silk and rice woven into every product name. What most people don't know is that Tatcha has been owned by Unilever since 2019. That's not a scandal by itself. Plenty of good brands get acquired. But it does mean the artisanal Kyoto ritual you're paying a premium for is now formulated and scaled inside one of the largest consumer goods companies on the planet. The same one that makes Dove soap. The actives doing the real work in Tatcha's anti-aging creams are largely humectants and antioxidants you can find at real concentration, sourced directly from Korea rather than borrowed as aesthetic. Beauty of Joseon's Dynasty Cream runs about $25, leads with actual ginseng and snail mucin, and doesn't need a myth to justify the price, because the price doesn't need justifying. Number 7. La Prairie. The Skin Caviar line will run you well into the hundreds for a single jar, into the thousands if you buy the full ritual, and the marketing leans hard on rarity. Caviar, luxury, exclusivity. Here's the part that never makes it into the ad copy. La Prairie has been owned by Beiersdorf since 1991. Beiersdorf, the company that makes Neva. The same research house also owns Eucerin, its dermatological skincare line, and Eucerin's hyaluron filler cream draws on overlapping hyaluronic acid technology from that same pipeline at a small fraction of the cost. You are not buying different science. You are buying a different lobby. Number 6. SK2. As the company tells it, the whole brand traces back to scientists noticing that elderly sake brewers had remarkably smooth hands from years of handling fermented rice, which led to Pitera, the galactomyces ferment filtrate, at the center of nearly every product they sell. It's a lovely story, And it's the reason a single bottle of their essence costs what it costs. SK2 is owned by Procter and Gamble, and galactomyces ferment filtrate is not proprietary to them. It's a well-studied fermentation ingredient that Korean brands have built entire lines around for over a decade. Missha's Time Revolution First Treatment Essence uses that exact category of ingredient as its headline active and has for years at a fraction of SK2's price point. Same fermentation science. Very different bill. Number 5. Guerlain's Orchidée Impériale. This is where I want you to actually use the lens I gave you. Flip the box over. Read the ingredient list top to bottom. Water, glycerin, a run of emollients and silicones. Completely normal for a rich cream. And then, well down the list, the orchid extract the entire collection is named for. Remember, ingredients are listed by concentration. Wherever the hero sits on that list is roughly where its actual percentage sits too. A drugstore night cream isn't glamorous, I know, but CeraVe's Skin Renewing Night Cream puts niacinamide, peptides, and ceramides high on its list, was developed with dermatologists, and costs around $20. The orchid is beautiful. It is not doing $1,200 worth of work. Number 4, and this one's a little different because it flips the pattern. Augustinus Bader's Rich Cream isn't owned by a conglomerate. It's an independent brand built around a patented compound the company calls TFC8, developed by a stem cell researcher, and it is genuinely one of the most expensive creams by the ounce on this entire list. I want to be precise here, because this isn't a case of proven ineffective. It's a case of we don't actually know, and that distinction matters. Most of the efficacy data circulating for TFC8 comes from studies commissioned by the company itself, not independently replicated research. That doesn't make it useless. It does mean you're paying prestige pricing for a formula whose claims you're largely taking on faith. If what you actually want is a peptide complex with published checkable data behind it, the Inky List's peptide moisturizer will run you under $20 and tells you exactly what percentage of what you're getting. Number 3. Clé de Peau Beauté. Their top cream, La Crème, sits among the single most expensive skincare products sold anywhere at retail. We're talking 4 figures for the flagship version. Notice a shape forming yet? Because here it is again. Clé de Peau is owned by Shiseido, and Shiseido's own Benefiance line, sold in ordinary drugstores and department stores for a fraction of the price, draws on decades of the same company's wrinkle research pipeline. This is becoming less a list of coincidences and more a pattern of how the entire luxury tier is built. Take one company's research, split it into a mass line and a prestige line, and let the packaging do the rest. Number 2, and I need you to really sit with this one, because it's the brand people think of as the pinnacle of the entire category. La Mer. The story, as the company tells it, is genuinely moving. A physicist, badly burned in a lab accident, spending over a decade fermenting sea kelp in his own kitchen, trying to heal his skin, eventually creating what they call miracle broth. It's a beautiful origin story. Here's what the label tells you that the story doesn't. Mineral oil, petrolatum, and glycerin sit above the broth on most of their ingredient lists. A completely standard rich cream base, the kind you'd find in far cheaper lotions. And the fermented ingredient itself sits further down than the marketing budget would suggest. La Mer has been owned by the Estee Lauder companies for decades now. If what you're actually after is a regenerating, barrier-repairing filtrate at honest concentration, COSRX makes a snail mucin cream that states its percentage plainly on the front of the box for around $25, not $400. Which brings me to number one. And I promised you this one would sting a little because it comes from my own side of the industry. Sulwasu's concentrated ginseng renewing cream is the single most iconic anti-aging cream to come out of Korea. Built on a genuinely old tradition, ginseng has been used in Korean herbal medicine for centuries. And that heritage is real, not invented for a label. But the modern retail version of that heritage will cost you well over $200 for a jar you'll finish in a couple of months. And Sulwasu is owned by Amore Pacific, the same parent company behind Innisfree and Laneige. Brands built and marketed as approachable, everyday, affordable, same conglomerate, same shelf, practically, wildly different price tags, depending entirely on which story they've decided to tell you. If you want the actual ginseng experience without the Royal Court Theater, I'm From makes a ginseng serum with a genuinely high concentration of ginseng root water, transparently sourced, at a small fraction of the price. And here's the twist I promised you at the very start. La Mer's deep sea myth and Sulwasu's royal court myth come from opposite ends of the earth, sold to completely different audiences, and they are, underneath all of it, running the exact same playbook. The jar got more expensive. The formula didn't. So, how do you actually use any of this the next time you're standing in front of a counter or scrolling at midnight with your card already in hand? A few habits, nothing complicated. First, flip the box or pull up the ingredient list before you read a single word of marketing copy. Remember, the order is a confession, and the further down the list your hero ingredient sits, the smaller a role it's actually playing. Second, do the price per ounce math in your head, not the sticker price. A jar that looks reasonable can be shockingly expensive once you account for how little product you're actually getting for that number. Third, spend the 5 minutes to look up who owns the brand. It genuinely explains more about the price than the formula usually does. And fourth, borrow one real technique while you're at it, because this part isn't a scam. Apply your actives in thin layers, thinnest and most watery first, richer creams last, and pat them in with your fingertips rather than dragging or rubbing. It sounds small. It changes how well anything, expensive or not, actually absorbs. None of this replaces sunscreen, by the way. No night cream on this list at any price does the protective work a broad spectrum SPF does every morning. So don't let a video about creams talk you into deprioritizing the one product in your routine that's actually saving your skin. A few honest notes before I let you go, because I'd rather you trust me than agree with me. Formulas get reformulated, prices shift, and what's on shelves in 6 months may not match exactly what I've described tonight. Treat this as a map of what to look for, not a guaranteed shopping list you can screenshot and never think about again. If you're trying any new active, from a $10 tube or a $400 jar, patch test it first. Expensive doesn't mean gentle, and cheap doesn't mean harsh. And I want to be fair to the other side of this too. Being owned by a giant conglomerate doesn't automatically make a product bad. And being independent doesn't automatically make it good, as that Augustinus Bader example should make clear. Plenty of prestige products are genuinely well formulated. The problem was never that they're expensive. The problem is that almost nobody checks whether the price and the formula actually agree with each other. Because zoom out far enough, and this stops being a story about 8 bad creams and starts being a story about an entire industry. A small handful of conglomerates, Estee Lauder, LVMH, L'Oreal, Shiseido, Amore Pacific, Procter & Gamble, Unilever, Beiersdorf, own most of the brands you'll ever put on your face, at every single price point, from the drugstore to the department store. The tiers were never really about the science. They were about which shelf, which story, which version of you the marketing department decided to sell to. Being owned by a giant was never actually the scandal. The scandal is that most of us never once thought to check. The jar got more expensive. The formula almost every time didn't. Tell me in the comments, which one of these have you been quietly buying and which one are you finally ready to stop overpaying for? I read every single one of them. And if you want me to keep doing this, pulling these formulas apart, ingredient by ingredient, so you don't have to, stay subscribed, because next time I'm taking you through the drugstore shelf itself to show you exactly which $10 creams are quietly outperforming half the jars on this list.